This podcast is brought to you in conjunction with hustro.com, a leading construction management software tool.
So you don't necessarily have to be an electrician. Of course, it's a good starting point. And most people who are SAPs are electricians or have an electrical background. But for instance, people who come from uni, they have no practical experience of being an electrician. They have knowledge of electricity through studies and etc. But then when they come into the company, they get hands-on experience doing what an SAP does, and they can come through that way. But yeah, you don't necessarily need that background. You can gain that, but as you rightly say, it's finding somewhere who will give you that opportunity, which is a challenge.
That is the big challenge. Hello everybody, Gavin Coyle, ImTheGaffer, back again with a great guest. Joe McFall is all the way from Scotland, and we were having a great conversation a couple of weeks ago, and it led into, well, what does an SAP do, Senior Authorized Person? And we got the feeling that there's a podcast in this because not many people would know what an SAP does. But if you do know, you know that they are like hen's teeth. They are absolutely inundated with requests for people like himself in the field. He's an operations director for SFTS, which is a company that actually provides these people and does other stuff, and we'll get into that as well. But the purpose of today's podcast is mainly to talk about the role of an SAP and what they do, and maybe give that information back down the chain to people that are in school or not sure about a career or progression, or maybe somebody might be in the electrical, mechanical trade and kind of thinking, well, kind of needed something else to do, or I want to do something different. Well, then this is the podcast for you to listen to. So Joe McFall, well done. Congratulations. You've made it to the show. We got you eventually.
Cheers, Gavin. We spoke a few weeks ago, as you said, and just took a while to find the time to be able to come on, but I was very keen to come on, so thank you for having me on.
Not at all. The reason we couldn't get you is because you're so busy. I think you're in Germany at the moment. Is that where you were in terms of a project?
Yes, so I'm working on a project on an offshore wind farm in Germany at this moment in time.
Okay.
It's not really started construction as such yet, so it's still in the very infancy of the project, so it's just getting procedures etc ready, but it should probably be starting to really kick off after the new year, I would imagine. That's when things will start getting really busy,
ramping up and stuff like that. Okay, let's get into it then. Senior Authorized Person, what is it? How do I become an SAP?
So a senior authorized person is essentially somebody who provides safety from an electrical system, a mechanical system operating usually at high voltages. You can get like SAPs on a low voltage network, but it's not as common as the high voltage network. And in terms of getting into it, it's a kind of niche area, Gavin. So for me, the way I done it was that I worked for the local electricity network operator. So I worked for Scottish Power and Energy Networks, and I kind of worked up through the ranks there to become a kind of senior authorized person. But there's other routes available as well. You don't necessarily have to do it that way. There's other ways open to people to do that, and it's kind of hard to say how you do it because it's quite niche, and there's a lot of training involved in it, and I think a lot of people see it as being a role that they'd like to get into, but they get frustrated because there aren't that many opportunities to do it, and that's the unfortunate thing.
Yeah, it's kind of once you're in, but how do you get in? It's one of those roles, isn't it? And who's going to train you, and who's got the time to actually give you to bring you to the level? So in terms of it, we're not talking third level qualification here, or are we? So do I need to have a third level qualification to become an SAP, I suppose?
No. So as I say, like I started as an apprentice with Scottish Power. So I had an electrical background through my apprenticeship. And generally you find most of the people who work as an SAP through the DNOs, the distribution network operators, they either start as an apprentice or they come in as a graduate engineer. So they do a uni degree electrical engineer, whatever it may be. They come in and they come in immediately as an engineer, and then they get trained up in operating on the network, issuing safety documents, switching, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So for anyone that's listening, you don't necessarily need third level qualification. You don't necessarily need to be an electrician.
Nope, you don't. So it's a very good point. I've worked with guys who haven't been electricians, and they've, obviously you need to have a knowledge of electricity, and you need to be able to prove that you understand electricity. So you don't necessarily have to be an electrician. Of course, it's a good starting point. And most people who are SAPs are electricians or have an electrical background. But for instance, people who come from uni, they have no practical experience of being an electrician. They have knowledge of electricity through studies and etc. But then when they come into the company, they get hands-on experience doing what an SAP does, and they can come through that way. But yeah, you don't necessarily need that background. You can gain that, but as you rightly say, it's finding somewhere who will give you that opportunity, which is a challenge.
That is the big challenge. And what I found, obviously it's in your field, but what I found is they generally go for people that have, 10 plus years experience in the industry. They, having 2 or 3 years experience in the industry doesn't really cut it. So I think that correct me if I'm wrong here, because it's your gig, but they tend to go for the more mature people that have a lot of skin in the game in terms of the industry.
But certainly, anybody who is in a recruitment position, for instance, if you think of like big construction projects, an offshore wind farm or a data center, let's say, who have massive electrical networks to manage and keep safe.
Yeah.
It's a topical subject because there has been incidents in the past where, through to time pressures or recruitment pressures, projects needed guys on who were SAPs. I'll correct myself and say guys, people who are SAPs to deliver some work for them. And a problem that was identified was that there are training courses for SAPs at certain training centres you can get throughout the UK and Europe, and they're 5-day courses. Now, you go on a 5-day course, that doesn't make you an SAP. Sometimes it teaches you the basics and refreshers of what an SAP does, but going on that course doesn't make you an SAP. And I think more so in the data center industry, there were rumours of that happening. People were going to these courses, getting a certificate, then going to the commissioning managers or the recruitment managers, whoever it may be, holding up a certificate saying, "I'm an SAP.
Wow.
Here you go." And they were getting onto the project, and I don't know anybody who this happened to, but news travels.
Yeah.
And I think there were a few kind of close calls with people who were saying they were SAPs when they weren't.
Yeah.
Fake certificates, all that sort of thing,
Wow. Like give people a sense of what goes wrong by not having a good SAP or no SAP on a project. So just give us an idea of the chaos that could happen from having an incompetent person or no person.
Yeah, absolutely. So, right at the very top, the worst thing that can happen is somebody can be killed. It's as simple as that. If you have, don't get me wrong, I was saying earlier on about these 5-day courses, you might have an electrician who goes in that, and the electrician might be really good, but going on a 5-day course to show you how to operate high voltage switchgear and the legislation round about it, as I said, doesn't make you an SAP. So that electrician may have gone onto a project and, had this certificate and said that he was an SAP and operated equipment that he wasn't familiar with. And that's a danger in itself. You need to know what you're doing with it. But yeah, at a very high level, employing people who aren't competent can lead to people being killed or seriously injured.
Yeah. So if I was to go with you, say next week, and I said to you, look, I want to do this SAP role, where would you bring me in terms of an education academic route, in terms of hands-on, and also with the academics? Like, give me a sense of how long it would take you to train me up.
So if we're talking somebody with an electrical background, right? They know what they're looking at. They understand the basics of electricity. They might have done an apprenticeship. They might be an engineer, a graduate engineer, beg your pardon. So in order to become an SAP, you're really looking at, again, this depends on probably the industry that you're involved in, because some are more complex than others. So let's say, for instance, you're talking about a distribution network operator.
Yeah.
So your SP Energy Networks, your ESBs, somebody who's going to be an operational SAP on their patch, you're talking 18 months training.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
to become even remotely close to being gauged as being competent enough to go out on your own, to run jobs yourself, to be the guy who's responsible for electrical safety.
Yeah.
But again, sometimes that isn't possible. You know yourself, you can't run a project waiting on people training for 18 months.
Yeah.
So when people get frustrated about how do I become an SAP? 18 months, how am I going to do that? You know, my advice to people is, if you do want to become an SAP and you don't have the background to be able to slot in somewhere immediately,
Yeah.
then companies who will train people up, the DNOs, large offshore wind operators like Ørsted, RWE.
Statcraft. Yeah.
If you have a background in electricity, if you have a background, in industrial operations, it's difficult to break into, but it's not unheard of if you can prove that you've got that background. But I won't lie, it's not the easiest thing to get into, to transition into. You have to have some sort of background or something that would be enticing to a network operator to bring you on to be an SAP.
I think the big operators, as you say, the big distribution operators have the capacity to, hone the skills of these people and have all the resources to put in around these people as well. And it's not something that like a small electrical company can just turn their hand and say, oh, by the way, let's start, doing some SAP work. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. So what I probably would say is that the large distribution network operators, they are aware that there is a skills gap for people to do these jobs, and what they've started doing is a sort of adult apprenticeship. So for people who maybe have a trade background in other trades, mechanics, you name it, they've got opportunities to go in as adult trainees and maybe become a cable jointer or an overhead linesman or a electrical fitter, and then the progression route is opened up to them. If they do well in that role, then the SAP role is opened up to them to be able to move into that as well.
Yeah. So basically, the safety of everybody's lives on a job is in the SAP's hand. In other words, when you go to switch on, if all the paperwork is not in place and if all the behaviors haven't been put in the right way and everybody's not on the same page and the SAP gives a sign off, you could basically potentially cause a massive explosion. You could kill the person at the point of the system, or fires, everything else. The whole lot is included. You can basically just blow up a project if the SAP gets it wrong.
Yes. Don't get me wrong, there would have to be a lot of things to go wrong to blow something up. But in terms of if let's take for instance, you wanted somebody to work on a cable termination,
Yeah.
At a piece of switchgear, you need to make sure that there's barriers in place. You need to make sure that it's properly isolated, earthed. You need to be able to prove that it's dead to the person who you're going to ask to put their hands on it. So all of those things, and that's where the responsibility comes. You're asking somebody to put their hands on a piece of high voltage electricity. They're trusting you.
Yeah.
To have done your job. And you rightly say, if you get it wrong, if you don't properly put the isolations in, or if you don't properly apply a lock, or you don't switch off the automatic kind of switch that allows the piece of equipment to be operated from the control room, and something happens, that piece of equipment closes, becomes live again, the consequences are catastrophic.
Horrific. Yeah, horrific. Have you any
And it is energizing equipment as well. If you're energizing equipment for the first time, there's so many things that you need to put in place. Make sure that nobody's there. Make sure you've got the barriers all signed off. It's
yeah.
Things are put in place.
Are you looking to spend less time on paperwork and more time making things happen on site? Hustro.com is the simplest construction management software out there. Streamline inspections, defect reporting, and all your project documentation all in one app. With Hustro.com, contractors are seeing 75% less time on inspections and reports, 47% faster corrective actions, and almost a third quicker decision making. Hustro.com is the simplest software to manage construction projects, period. Level up your site efficiency today with Hustro.com.
To the nth degree, so that you are removing risk from anybody in that vicinity, and even yourself as an SAP. You don't want to be standing in front of a piece of switchgear and operating if you can avoid it. There's a thing called the hierarchy of switching. So you try and remove yourself from standing in front of a piece of switchgear operating it, so that you can get the control room to operate it first and foremost. Why would you stand in front of it, put yourself in danger?
Do you have any examples of where it went wrong, or any antidotes or case studies, or have you heard of any sort of...
There's been loads over the years. Trying to think of one right now, a specific one, but the one that comes to mind is, I think it was 2008, and I think it was somewhere in England on UKPN's distribution network operator patch, and I think it was an engineer who was on standby. He gets sent out to a site somewhere, and there was an alarm, so he'd been dispatched to it, and it was a piece of equipment called a tap changer, which is attached to a transformer. And for whatever reason, I think the guy tried to operate it manually, and exploded because there was a problem with it, and that guy was killed. And I actually remember that happening, and there was a big investigation into it and some findings from it. But essentially, that's what can happen. Yeah.
There isn't, and this is probably an interesting question for yourself more so than the audience. But there isn't an SAP association or a network of a group of people that come together to set the standards of SAPs?
Well, there is something called the Electricity Networks Association, which is probably about the closest thing you'll get to that, albeit it's not specifically for SAPs. It's more for how electrical networks in the UK are operated. So that includes all the DNOs, and the ENA is kind of the overseeing body who look at or who provide guidance for the distribution network operators. But to answer your question, in terms of SAPs, no, there is not a universal body that I'm aware of.
Yeah, neither am I. You know that I was looking for an SAP for a client of ours only a couple of months back, and like the guy we got was like 77 years of age. Not to say there's anything wrong with working at 77 years of age, but it shows you how bad the issue is in terms of trying to find SAPs in the industry. That we still have to get guys out of retirement to plug the gap. Like it's like, I know there's a massive shortage of labour across the construction and engineering sectors, but like this particular role is just it's insane, because number one, the school kids don't know about this role, or the college kids don't know about this role, and number two, maybe there's a lack of education in the actual construction and engineering industries themselves, that they're not pushing for people to get into this SAP role. Like it's not going to get any better. And there's a ton of work especially in the industries of offshore wind, onshore wind, as you say, data centers, anything got to do with a hookup into a network. You need an SAP, and you need a really good SAP at that as well. So you're talking 18 months to get people up to speed. Like, we're not going to catch up.
No, it's a really good point you make. And I'll go back to this 18-month thing, and that's the kind of standard that the DNOs kind of look at. If they're going to put somebody through training to become an SAP, 18 months is the kind of probably minimum they're looking at to make sure that they're competent. However, rephrase that, because not every industry is the same. And this comes back to your point here about having the people available. There just isn't enough guys to satisfy the needs of these projects. And the training thing is a really hot topic right now, because on one hand, you've got the need to man up on a project, and then you've got the lack of manpower to be able to do that, or lack of suitably qualified people to be able to step in and do it.
Yeah.
And that whole training thing is a massive issue right now, and there's a lot of talk about how they bridge the gap between somebody who might be an electrician, and how do they get to that level that we can maybe use them as an SAP. And it's a huge gap. And as I said earlier, some industries are more complex than others.
Yes.
Or some networks are more complex than others. For instance, on a DNO network, you would never be able to go in and start operating after a few weeks. It just wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
But as I said previously, data centers, because it's maybe a younger
demographic
industry as such, you don't have or they didn't have the same, I hesitate to say standards, as maybe the network operators.
Yeah.
But maybe that's what it is. Maybe it is that. Maybe it's brutal as that. But I think it is getting better. But it still doesn't take away from the fact that the gap of the number of positions required and the number of people who are actually available, it's quite a big issue.
This is the conundrum, because people are going to cut corners. It's human nature, and people are going to, as you say, do a 5-day course and think that they're an SAP and convince people that they're an SAP. And because people are so stressed out trying to find these people, that when someone eventually says, "Yeah, I'm an SAP," so here we go, they're not really going to go and scrutinize the hell out of that person as much, because as you said, they've produced a 5-day cert, and it's like, here we go. And it's a really, really serious job. Like, it can't, shouldn't be laughing, but it can't, like, that's my fear, is quality and safety is going to suffer here.
It's a really good point you raise, and it's very topical, and it kind of goes back to what I've been talking about the 5-day course thing, right? So if you have a proper governance setup, if you are running a proper, HV setup, if you've got the right people in charge, if you've got the right procedures in place, then you should not be in a position where you're hiring somebody who's been on a course for 5 days and is saying that they're an SAP. It just won't happen, because there is a robust procedure to go through to prove competency. And somebody is signing that person off to be able to operate on the network that the client company is operating. Somebody has to put a signature to that, or they should be, if it is even a remotely well functioning setup that they've got. And it's a real issue. And I think there has been instances in the past where somebody has been allowed to go out and operate because they had a certificate. So the key is you really have to have robust procedures to avoid that, and ensure that it's only competent people that can operate on your network. And if you're not doing that, then it's total negligence.
Is there no statutory form that would authorize an SAP to be on a project?
Very good point, right? So again, another talking point that's been going on for as long as I can remember. So for people to understand, there is no standard, how would I say, competency framework for an SAP. No standards. And even if you take the DNOs within UK, they all have different standards for putting people through the training. They all have different standards or different rule sets. So an SAP who has been authorised to operate on, let's say, SSE's patch cannot just go and start operating on UKPN's patch. And likewise for the offshore wind operators, somebody who's authorised by Ørsted cannot go and operate for RWE. So there is no universal framework. And I know that it was been talked about by DNOs or certainly within the UK anyway, that they were looking at how do we make this easier? If we need people who are authorised on, under one company's safety rules, how do we make it easy so that they just come in and can operate on ours, that they're deemed competent by them? Why can they not be deemed competent by us? It maybe not be quite as simple as that. There may be some differences in the network, of course, that they need to be aware of and need to prove that they know what they're talking about. But it's a talking point, and I don't think that that's anywhere close to being realistic. I don't think it's probably ever going to happen, because there's so many differences between how a DNO operates, how a data center operates, how an offshore wind farm operates, and any other factories, anywhere that's got a high voltage network. They all operate differently. They all have different standards.
Yeah, that's what one thing that got me was the procedures. The management systems and procedures are all different from the different clients. Therefore, someone switching procedure could be different than another client's switching procedure. But Jesus, you gotta start somewhere. My own personal belief is that before they even get in the door, that there should be some sort of a statutory document that has to be signed off, and within that statutory document, people have to declare that this person has minimum X amount of experience and whatever competency and whatever skill set in order to do the job. It seems loose, if you don't mind me saying so. It doesn't seem tight.
I know what you're getting at, and in terms of a one size fits all thing to say, an SAP is a universal qualification, I think that would probably be the ideal scenario. I think everybody would probably agree on that.
Mhm.
It would be so much easier, but getting to that point is probably never going to happen. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
There's just so many things there's so many different industries and so many different awarding bodies that need to be involved in that.
Yeah.
It's a massive piece of work.
Yeah, and that's
But
sorry to cut across you.
what I would say is what I alluded to earlier about having governance in place, albeit the overall procedure or overarching SAP qualification, that doesn't exist. But if you're in an organisation who operates a high voltage network or is going to have to use a senior authorised person in any capacity, you have to have a really, really good governance system to make sure that you are only allowing competent people to operate on your system. It's a must.
That's why you see SAPs not really jumping ship from one client to another. They tend to stay with the same client, and the client tends to pay them enough money to hold on to them. So
there's probably two aspects in that. You're probably looking at the guys who are full-time employees with the big established companies, and then you've got the guys who are freelancers who work in the kind of construction and commissioning phases.
Okay.
The guys who work in the kind of construction and commissioning phases tend to move around a little bit. Obviously, where the work is, they'll go there.
Yeah.
Excuse me, but the guys or the people who are employed full time with the big network operators and the big offshore wind developers, they tend to stay in the one place. You're right in saying that.
Talk to me about, give me a sense of an hourly rate or a day rate for an SAP, and it'll just this will probably blow people's mind in terms of.
Yeah, so as a contractor, as a freelancer, you're probably looking round about this moment in time. I would say an average about £700 a day, and it kind of seems to be slowly moving up the way. don't get me wrong, there are some places who pay more than that. There are some places who pay a little bit less, but yeah, you're probably saying 700, I would say, is the kind of average going rate right now.
For a contract SAP. For the contract SAP, would that be 700? And would that include expenses, or is that all in, or is expenses on top of that?
Depends where you go.
Yeah.
I think a lot of data centers, especially European ones, will advertise a rate per day, and then they will say that the accommodation and the travels maybe included in that. But then you'll get some in different industries will say it's an all-in rate. So the
Yeah.
contractors are responsible for their travel costs and their accommodation costs. So yeah, it's a mixed bag.
And is an SAP a full-time job?
Absolutely, yeah. And just to clarify, it's not just contract SAPs who are paid well. Full-time SAPs are paid very well as well.
Yeah, because they were getting poached. That's why.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, taking for instance, I'm not going to reveal the company, but SAPs who are full-time for an offshore wind developer are probably, with not being hard pushed, they're probably making about £110,000 a year. Yeah, so that's the kind of money that's involved.
Yeah, it's only going to get more, as you say, especially because there's a barrier to entry. And number one, and number two, there isn't enough of you. So in terms of like yourself, what do your company do in this space? Like, I know that you're an SAP yourself, but obviously you're a director of the business. Give us a sense of what SFTS does.
Hello, gaffers. Hope you're enjoying the podcast. We love every one of the guests that we have, but in order to bring on more great guests, we'd love to build a channel with you. So hit the subscribe, hit the like button, and let's create a really great community where we bring in better and better guests for you to deliver great content and great pieces of information that you can take back into your business. Now, back to the podcast.
Yeah, so SFTS is a business that kind of specialises in high voltage operations. So myself and my business partners, we identified, obviously we've got a set of skills that are in high demand, and we feel that we can offer these skills to people in situations where they may be struggling.
Yes.
Because of the skills shortage, there's not enough people to be able to deliver it. So we saw an opportunity and we're like, yeah, let's do this. Let's see what we can do. And so the three directors were all senior authorized persons, control persons. Some are authorizing engineers as well. So we will authorize SAPs, control engineers, to operate on a network. You know, we write procedures. We look at safe systems of work. We can write safety rules for clients to be able to deploy on their networks. We can look after their assets. We can operate their networks for them. We can maintain their networks for them.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's a good space to be involved in right now. And as you say, we feel that that's only going to go in one direction, and that's up the way.
Yeah, it's a very niche business. It's actually a great business. There's a kind of saying that you should build a moat around your business. In other words, look for a business that you can, protect yourself with a moat by, a certain few things. One of them would be, is it highly regulated? Boom, SAP, yes. In terms of the electrical industry, is highly regulated. Number two, is it unique? It's unique. There's not many people going to copy or get into that business in terms of competitors. Obviously, some of the bigger mech and elect companies that are in the industries, they do this stuff, but they're struggling no more than anybody else. So you specialize in providing the role of SAP, but you've saying do a bit of maintenance as well.
Yeah, so you're right in saying that there are companies who do provide these services, but what we are finding is that these companies are big companies, and they're maybe too big for some organisations to bring on board. And also these big companies are also stretched.
Yeah.
There's so many installations, that have high voltage networks that that need looked after.
Yeah.
They need somebody with expertise to tell the client to say, that's not in good condition. You need to think about,
Yeah.
do you maintain your equipment? Do you maintain your transformers? Do you maintain your circuit breakers, your switches?
Yeah.
All of that sort of things and there's, you'd find it hard to believe that there are still some networks that are just left to their own devices that don't get looked after. And the consequences of that are enormous. If something goes wrong, that company's opened themselves up to, all sorts of trouble just by not having some sort of maintenance regime on their assets that, and people might not even realize that they have they have that network to be looked after. They might just take it for granted. Oh, we've got a power supply at 11,000 volts or 33,000 volts or 6.6 kV.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just automatic. We just take it for granted.
Yeah.
You need to look after that.
Yeah. No, I see it's hand in glove. If you're going to be an SAP, the maintenance kind of fits into that as well. I can see where that fits in. There's like the likes of static and stuff like that. People, the discharge. People not even doing any testing on discharge in substations and stuff like that. And a lot of stuff, a lot of the assets that are out there, with all due respect, like they're built like 50, 60 years ago, and the data centers and all the wind turbines and stuff, that's all brand new kit. That's all getting, thrown up or whatever else. But it's the existing infrastructure is suffering because of it. And I'm not talking about Ireland. I'm talking about just everywhere. I think if you talk to anybody, they're all saying the same thing: is that the network is under a severe pressure.
Correct. Especially with, we were talking earlier about electric car charging.
Yeah.
All of that infrastructure that needs to be added to the existing networks. All of that load that's going to be going on top of what's already there. For, as you say, transformers that, I see ones that are 70-year old been pulled out and changed. They're still out there. They're still doing the job that, and don't get us wrong, the old stuff is bomb-proof. It's really good stuff.
It is.
It was built to last. The new stuff, jury's out on that.
Right.
But
okay.
That doesn't negate the fact that you need to upgrade networks, because those old transformers, although they're good, they've reached the end of their serviceable life. Plus, the load is increasing, so they need to be replaced, they need to be upgraded. And you're absolutely correct to say that the older stuff needs to be looked at more urgently than the new stuff, because just for the nature of the equipment, it's been in service for 50, 60, 70 years, so it needs more care. The new stuff, whilst it also needs to have a maintenance regime, needs to have that set check periods, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, to make sure that it's compliant. There's no issues that are developing on that.
Mm-hmm.
You need to keep on top of that. But the old stuff needs the same. You need to check that periodically. You need to make sure it's in good nick. You need to check, does this need upgraded? Is there a problem? And so many people don't understand that they need to do that. They just take it for granted. So if anybody's listening, I would say, if you have your own HV network, or anybody that does have an HV network, you need to make sure that it's properly maintained and looked after.
Yeah, well said. And in fairness, the engineering that was put in place, when you think about how many years ago that was put in place, and the fact that it's still operating at a level where the load is so high, like, it's crazy, isn't it? Like, it's a testament to those companies of what they built back in the day. Like,
it's incredible. And speaking from my own experience, as I said, I worked with Scottish Power Energy Networks, so I had worked on a DNO where there were lots of these legacy assets, lots of oil-filled equipment, built in the 50s, 60s, and it's fantastic stuff. It really is. Even the cables, the low voltage cables that were installed 1920s, 1930s, solid copper cables, where they've been replaced now with aluminium cables, and they're a lot less robust in that sense. Aluminium corrodes much more easy, but just the general quality of stuff nowadays is lower than what it has been in the past. But yeah, definitely, absolutely right to say the stuff that we've put in these times is really high quality stuff.
Tell me a bit about the future for yourselves then. Where do you see the future of your business going then? Obviously, it's going to go north in terms of, you know, people looking for your services and stuff like that. Like, you're based in Scotland, are you, and you just cover Europe, or what's your plans as a business?
We certainly hope it's going to keep going north, Gavin, put it that way. But we certainly hope that our services will be of interest to people. I believe that they should be, and they will be. But time will tell. But certainly, if we're just projecting, we've been talking about it. Wind farms need looked after. They need people to operate their HV assets, onshore and offshore. Data centers need this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
All industries where, industrial scale electrical networks are in operation.
Yeah.
We see ourselves getting involved in that space, and being a bit of an industry disruptor type thing. We see ourselves being able to do things differently. We see ourselves being able to offer a high quality service to clients, because I know for a fact that there are people out there or companies out there who say that they can deliver, a quality service and asset management for their electrical assets, when in fact it's really poor.
Yeah.
So we're positioning ourselves as a bit of a challenger to that, and saying, come and have a look at us, give us a go, and we'll show you. We've been brought up with DNO standards, customer service standards. So yeah, that's kind of where we see ourselves getting into that gap, shall we say.
Brilliant. A couple of curve balls at you, Joe, if you don't mind, just to just like we like doing that, just put you on the spot. Knowing what you know now, Joe McFall, what would you do different? And that could be in life. Doesn't have to be in business.
In life, oh man, I would probably have travelled a lot more when I was younger. I would have liked to have seen more of the world in my younger days. Still plan to do that when the kids are up and a bit older and they're not so dependent on us anymore. I would like to go to as many countries as possibly could. But yeah, I would probably like to have travelled more when I was younger, for sure.
Brilliant. A favourite book or movie?
Oh man, I will say my favourite book is Glue by Irvine Welsh. Fantastic. And movie, oh man, there's a few in there.
So what's the book about? Tell me. You have my curiosity up.
So it's kind of along the same lines as Trainspotting. So it's the kind of Edinburgh, I don't know, drug scene, if you will.
Yeah.
A few pals, different stories going on at the same time, how they all intertwine, and the dynamics of the group, and how drugs affect them and all that. And it's funny as well. It's written in a Edinburgh accent, so it's I can imagine for people who aren't Scottish following it, it'd be like, what the hell is this? But yeah, it's good. Yeah, I really enjoyed that book. It's probably the best book I've ever read. It's the most involved I've been in a book anyway.
There's probably a movie in there somewhere.
Should be.
Glue, is that what it's called? Yeah, Glue. Favorite holiday destination, Joe?
Oh man,
or your go-to place to get your head sorted out after all that SAP work?
If we're talking about pure tranquility,
yeah,
Donegal.
Wow.
Yeah. Up Fannet Head. My wife's family are originally from that area.
Yeah.
And we still go back every few years, and I'd never been before until I met my wife, and it's an amazing place.
It's
fantastic. So nice.
It is. I have to. Well, I'm biased in that regard as well, obviously, as you know. But in fairness, Scotland has its own glory. Yeah, there's not much difference.
I mean, if we're talking exotic locations and stuff like that as well, the best place I've probably been is Rio de Janeiro in Brazil.
Yeah, you wouldn't be going with a t-shirt and a pair of shorts to Donegal. Joe, if people want to get in touch with you, how do they do it? So obviously the website is SFTS.
Yes, it is. So it's www.sfts-hv.com. We have a contact page on the website where you can send us a message, or you can contact us on LinkedIn. or you can contact me on LinkedIn as well. I'm on LinkedIn, Joseph McFall, and SFTS. I've got a page as well, so feel free to reach out if you so desire.
Yeah, so for anyone listening or watching, obviously on YouTube, if you're talking to anybody and they're not sure about their career, or they're not happy in their career, like this is definitely a hot topic. SAP, senior authorized person. I would reach out to Joe if I was you on LinkedIn. I'm sure he'll give you a steer as regards, a more in-depth conversation about how to get into the industry and the opportunities that exist. No more than any other career, everyone's suffering in terms of shortage of labour. But if you want a niche business for yourself, in terms of if you want to be a contractor, or if you want to work for somebody like Joe, there's a massive opportunity here. And delighted, Joe, for you to be on the show and give us that insight. It's been brilliant to listen to. It's, some people might think it was boring, but if people know what they know and they listen to this, they'll get it. So thanks very much, Joe, for being on the show.
No problem at all, Gavin. It's been a pleasure to be on, and thanks for having me on. And as you say, to spread knowledge of what an SAP does and the lack of SAPs available in the industry, and also for the fact that the role isn't advertised in schools. I didn't know about it when I went to school. I had no idea. I've just kind of fallen into this.
Yeah.
But if I could give anybody a bit of advice, is look into the role, look into how you become this, because it's a highly rewarding career. But thanks for having me on.
Thanks very much, Joe. We'll see you again in the future, I'm sure. Take care, buddy.
Cheers, Gavin. Thank you.
All the best.
Astro is the simplest construction management software. Track progress, control works, access docs, and analyze performance, all in one platform.
First, eliminate planning and tracking headaches. Set up work areas, schedule and assign tasks quickly with our intuitive interface. Track progress in under 15 seconds. Attach documentation, photos, and videos to keep crews aligned. The whole team can communicate with each other through Astro or email, whichever feels more natural. But tracking is just the beginning. Next, standardize and simplify control and assurance. Automatically align inspections with ISO standards and internal procedures to ensure compliance. Connect inspections with issue tracking to identify and address problems quickly. Control quality, safety, and environmental compliance with observation and corrective action tracking. Activate your subcontractors through QR code submission forms and react faster than ever. And when you need information, access project data anytime, anywhere. 1 second drawing load to instantly open any blueprint. Smart file organization to help you find the correct document quickly and easily. Even without an internet signal, you can still access schematics, plans, and specifications. This multi-device power and our Astro Cloud Drive keep you coordinated everywhere. Now, here's where it gets powerful. You can transform your project's data into results. Turn issues into actions with instant insights that spot critical problems before they escalate. Create custom reports in PDF, Excel, or CSV format. Start testing Astro for free today.